I'm Tanya Fox, and you're listening to Fox Talks Business Podcast. I started my career in the corporate world, but always played to my own tune and loved to think outside of the box. This didn't always serve me well with the bosses, so I made the decision to become an entrepreneur. And that little seed of entrepreneurial curiosity continued to grow as I branched out into retail, service, and franchise businesses. Now, I have been fortunate to have amazing successes in the last 2 decades, but they did not come without some really big failures and even bigger lessons learned. And that's why I started this podcast, not just to share the failures, but to show you how you can turn every failure into a success. We're going to hear from some amazing humans from around the world that are going to share their stories of the good, the bad, and the motivational entrepreneurial life has to offer. After all, life is too short to make all of the mistakes yourself, so why not learn from each other? And of course, we're going to have some fun, because as I always say, well, you know what? I'll tell you that at the end of the episode. Hey, Foxy listeners, thanks so much for tuning in today. I'm really excited to bring you my guest today, James. And I'm just going to dive right in because there's a lot I want to talk about in a short amount of time that I have him. James, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Tanya, it's an honor to be here with you.
So when we had kind of met and I started learning more about you and your story, I really found it intriguing because I think that there's a lot of people that are out there that were where you were. So can you give us a little bit of your story and then let's talk about how you got out of that and how you help others?
Perhaps I should ask you, where do we perceive your listeners are?
Well, they're all over the world. So, but I think I feel like when I was reading your story, there's a lot of, our listeners who are kind of going, I feel like I'm at a point in my life where I look like I have what I'm supposed to have. I look like I have a good life, a stable job, but there's something that's missing. There's some spark, there's some fire. I just feel like I'm just going day to day. I'm not really living. I'm not really enjoying.
I love that. So, okay. So you bring up so many things, and this is often what the feminine spirit does. She says, and then the men listen, we're like, whoa, there's a lot there. So it's kind of like this place of, we get so caught up in our achievements, which are really awesome, until all of a sudden they seem empty. And there's nothing wrong with achieving, but we have to mature our achiever forward. And I think when we begin to feel uncomfortable with what we're experiencing, that doesn't mean that what we've experienced is the bad news. Because if we associate what we've gone through is perhaps what's led us to this horrible place of discomfort, we now label discomfort as the bad news. The honest to goodness truth is we want to get comfortable with the uncomfortable, meaning the uncomfortable is just here to serve us, that maybe we want to keep moving, and not like, get up, you lazy, none of this identity criticizing voice, but it is just nicely saying, hey, you've been here for a while, so why don't you build off of where you've been and you move forward? And so where I once was achieving finances, and I did quite well at it. Bank account is plenty. Home crisis 2008 happened. We were in the real estate, land development, custom home building industry. And so that all crumbled. How many times in life don't we reckon that there's a transition period coming? For me, it was those years. Those years of where I thought it was all going to look a certain way, and all of a sudden it didn't. What do you do with what you perceived was going to go different? And you feel pressure. And how many times in life don't we go from transition from first half of life to all of a sudden we reckon that there's something inviting us to participate with the next half of life? And there's so much uncomfort there. And what do we do with that uncomfort? And again, if we label that as the bad news, we're going to resist. And I resisted for about 2.5 years of my life. And I resisted to the point where I successfully found a way of checking out of life, not exiting life, but checking out. Exiting would be to have ended it for myself. I contemplated, but I decided what would be a better option is just to sedate myself so that I could sleep. So successfully sleeping for 18.5 hours a day for 2.5 years. And so what's interesting is I was so uncomfortable with what was happening. The housing crisis. My son was diagnosed with high functioning autism. I have two boys, 17 and 15 present. And what's so very, and how would I say, it's kind of sad, to be honest. It's sad that I took those years. If I were to be really, 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 really honest, it's sad that I took those years and actually just reconcile that I felt like wasted years. Though the thing is, those years allowed me to become who I am today. So I was very uncomfortable during those times. And let's be honest, I could have just allowed pain to happen. And I've created an acronym for pain, which is please accept inner nudgings. Please accept inner nudgings. You know, I could have just been okay with that. The only thing, though, is I chose self-induced suffering. And that is when you ignore the inner nudgings. Pain is like that light on your dashboard that flashes and says, hey, listen, you might want to pop the hood and see what's going on beneath. But when you don't, meaning when you wait for the discomforts to come versus you initiating them. And what I mean to say is it's important we build inner musculature for what it looks like when we feel the pressures of our life. If we don't bring safety to, and if we don't say this is actually what we actually want to feel pressure. Without pressure, there's no life. You know, they say we live between the tension of boredom on the left side. So psychoanalysts will say boredom on the one side and depression on the other. There's nothing wrong with being bored for a moment or depressed for a moment. But if we live there, that's the problem. And so these bookends, they pressurize us in the middle. And so why is it the bad news? We get to feel pressure. And so I think the point I'm trying to make here is instead of running away from the pressure, and we become as a society, I believe, addicted to running away from all things that press us. When pressing is actually what will squeeze out. It's like the lemon, pressing both sides, you'll squeeze, get some juice out of it, right? And so please accept inner nudgings. When I look at that season of my life, I think, like you're saying, your audience, you know, feeling so uncomfortable. And what do you do with that uncomfort? We can do two things. There's many things, but two things for surely we can do. We can build more into the certainties of our life by looking for them. And that creates suffering. If we look for certainties, you might wait, pray, and hope forever. Certainty is something you bring, not what you look for. Certainty is what you bring to yourself, saying, listen, if it's to be, then leave it to me. Not saying that we don't leave room for grace. There's plenty of room for grace because we have no business touching that. We can't. That's not of us to do.
Right.
If the tree wants to grow, it will. If it doesn't, it won't. No matter what you do, it just won't. There's something else going on. We have to reckon this, right? But when we focus on what we can do about it, then we move towards, and now I lost my way and I'm so sorry. And this is an example of discomfort. Well, what did I just say? Help me, track me back.
You were talking about, you were just recently talking about sitting in discomfort, like feeling that. We were talking about the acronym of pain, nudging you along, to listen to that, and that we need to be okay with getting into those feelings. Does that help, or is it gone?
Well, here's what's helpful. It's helpful that at least one person was listening. Well, here's exactly right. And so there's to the humor of life. There's to the uncomfort. I just manifested it here. I just did it. I wanted my thought to flow, and here what I felt is actually going, wait a minute, that bunny trail, you had a point and you're going to close it off and wrap it up tight. And all of a sudden it's whoops and it's gone. And why is it that we fear and question that our value and what we're bringing to the world is only when we remember all the things and when we only get what we want? You see, preference, when we just gun for preferring what and finding joy and experiencing what we prefer most, we miss the mark every single time.
Yeah. Well, and I actually don't want this edited out because I think it's a prime example, because I think
please don't.
There's but I think there's such especially in today's day and age, there's such this feeling of needing perfection and just obtaining goals. And it's almost like we've forgotten to stop and enjoy anything. Like it's always the pursuit.
Mm-hmm. Mhm.
And I think that that's something that a lot of people are suffering from. Like, I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't strive for things, but do you find that a lot of people are forgetting to live in the moment, and it's just constantly about the future? If I do this now, I'm only doing this now for later.
And that's and spot on. And so it triggered back the remembrance of what I was going to say, but it wrapped up into something different. You see, I think there's purpose in what happens. If a person gets dementia, if a person gets Alzheimer's, if a person forgets. I didn't get either of those diseases just recently or now, but there's purpose. And so here's to the point. We can either build, like I said, certainty, and that's if we look for it out there, it's suffering, or we can lean into is also doing onus to what we all want, and that's to get comfortable with the unknown, which is building a healthy muscle of uncertainty, being able to enjoy not knowing. You see, if we're only ever gunning towards the surprises that we prefer, ask yourself, does life ever turn out exactly the way you and I want? Never. Not in a relationship, not in a business, not in entrepreneurship, not if you're going to college, university. It never ends up exactly. You can have fantasy of how you want it to be, but reality always wins out. There's always a slight twist to it. And so unless we become proficiently adapt and have the inner musculature developed to handle surprises that we weren't expecting, we're so good at creating the surprise we want through the lens of a win. But when it comes to a loss, we don't think of that. We don't become okay with things. And if that happens, I'll still be okay. We say, well, typically we don't say those things because we just want to avoid. If we're running away from, we're actually anxiously, we say we're building certainty in our life, but we're actually repressing our need for uncertainty, where it's repressed. We say that, oh, no, we're okay with what happens, but actually we're so not okay with what happens that it's actually glaringly obvious. Like, think of COVID. They say that the reason that society has become so worrisome about the current state of affairs is because we as a collective believe that we're not progressing fast enough. To your point on presence. So what happens with your presence? Try to flee your presence for a moment, for but a moment. It doesn't work. You can only ever be where your feet are. You must be there. If you're not there, something will pass you by, and it's called life. And you get to decide what that will be. Meaning participation, I think we all do with life. The only thing is how you reach into participation. Do you reach in by seeking to exclude and just shut out and pretend it's not there? We all have beside us a little trap door. And in the trap door, down in there are some ghosts. We get to contribute to those ghosts if we like, by pulling them out and turning our face towards them and realizing, why be afraid of the fear? Why not just look at it and remove the sting, which is what happens when you just attend to observing what this is. A loss isn't a negative. We don't have to turn a negative into a positive because it was never a bad thing. A loss is literally the reality of life, just like a win is. Ask yourself, because it never turns out the way we perceived it would, it's inevitable that the human being will feel like the human will feel like it's a loss or it's a win. And that's the simplicity of it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what an animal does. An animal just keeps it at like danger or safety. That's what an animal does. Like our dog, when it looks out the window, it's not looking just for nothing. It's looking to see, is it safe or dangerous? That's all that it does all day long. But the human, we've been given this intrinsic, we go beyond the animal structure and ability. We can just stare out the window and not be focusing on safety or danger at all. We can just be like glancing out there and just staring out into the abyss, because we've been given the ability to go into the gray of life, not the good, bad, danger, safe, right, wrong, but in the middle is the gray. The gray isn't to take the feels of like, oh, what's happening here, the pressure of a loss, or oh, what's happening there, the elation of a win. It's not to take the feels away, but it's to bring them together so we can feel them simultaneously for the joy of life. Ask yourself, if you go to a funeral and you see the person in the coffin going down into the hole or sprinkling the ashes, we all would like that person to be here. What makes that person a person? The feels of life. Consider taking a coin for half a second, rub it between your fingers. Feel the texture on your thumb on one side, feel the texture of the coin on the other side, and just realize that life is two sides, just like a coin. The reality of life isn't just one side. It's always both and. It's not either or, it's both and. Because now let's try the either or. Take the coin, slap it on the counter, and look at it and try to convince yourself that that coin is only what you see. It's only one side. It's insanity. Your mind won't let you. Mm-hmm. So pick up the coin again and realize, just like your life, it is both sides, and it isn't you deciding is it good or bad. Because anytime you make a decision, is it good or bad, you throw yourself into a hellish existence. You're going to be about unhelpful toiling. And that was my journey. I was trying to decide in that season of my life when so many things came together, when there was a transition period. I decided, listen, I need to decide is it good or bad. And I was trying to sort. And the more I tried to sort, the worse it got. Where finally I realized, how about this just is? And what it is, I began to appreciate things in life instead of expecting that I should have done different. To your point of behaving. And sorry, I'm going on a rant.
No, that's okay.
On your point of behaving, and I'll shut up after this.
No.
But on your point of behaving, I think, and you took it straight out of my playbook. I used to behave life and perform life, whereas now I live life. And so I sure hope you don't edit out that part earlier, because that's who I am. That's the reality of me. The good news, Freudian slips and all, is that's who I get to be. And I get to choose. Do I want it all glitz and glamour? That's the worst thing, because nobody will trust me or look upon me as a human. I make it hard for people if I shore up and just say, oh, my accolades. Mm-hmm. I'm a human, and I want people to see the fullness of who I am. Why shame and blame? I'll never forget, years ago, I met Tony Robbins. We were in London, met him behind the stage. And one of the things that I really honor, and we went there for our 15th year anniversary. Megan and I have been together for 27 years now. I'm married 22. So one of the things that I really appreciated about him, and we ran up to him, we gave him a hug, and my wife's like all of 4'10" a quarter, and she jumps up and she hugs him around the neck, and he's looking at me, and her legs are dangling because he's way up there, right? And so one of the things that I appreciate the most is that we get to liberate ourselves. We don't have to wait for somebody to come free us. We have a key in our back pocket. And the key is, if we decide that we are the sum total of all of our parts, everything belongs, there's nothing wasted. Meaning there's no need to change your identity when you're in the airport, or when you're behind the stage, or when you're on the stage of your life, or when you're not there. When I come out of the bathroom, when you see me down the street, when you see me on stage or in an airport, who you get here is who I am. I once behaved and performed life, and I'll tell you something, my life was miserable. And that's what threw me into the story. I was trying to do all things right until willpower ran out. And willpower will exhaust. And so I think one of the things that, and I love this about you, and I did a lot of research on you. One thing that I love about you is you have this, you've let life in, and life has shaped you, and it's allowed you to choose that there's many ways we can onboard experience of life. And you've chosen humor as one of them. And I think that is brilliant. Because the moment I did that in my life, it changed so much. I mean, I got to be grateful for life, and don't change the facts. Facts are what they are. If it's a loss, it's a loss. It's the news. Why make it bad news? It's the news.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Well, and I think, for me, I realized how serious I had gotten in my life, because I had chosen a career in accounting, and you were supposed to be serious, and being a woman and trying to get in that, you weren't sort of taken seriously. And so I fell really deep into that trap, but it took me a long time to realize that what I connected to people the most with was humor. What brought me out of every type of situation, whether it was loss or whether it was like doing something, good, if we achieved a goal, like everything just seemed to always come back to humor. And I just made a conscious decision that I want to have that in everywhere. And it was actually when my dad passed away, when he was sick in the hospital, and he was like, do not have this morbid crying funeral for me. Like, I want you to have a celebration of my life. Like, because if you do that, if you sit there and cry and make it all mopey, then you're dishonoring everything that I strived for my entire life. Because he strived for freedom and to be, to sail around the world and have this amazing life. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. Like everything needs to be a celebration, the good and the bad, because like you said, even when we have those moments where it feels like either a loss or you feel like you failed at something, it's a good thing, because there's a reason, maybe it's that you weren't supposed to do that. That's not the path you were supposed to be on, or there's a lesson for you to learn. Like my mom always says, if you keep repeating the same thing, you're just like, you're not getting the message. So they're going to keep sending you the memo in different ways until you finally get it. So maybe just instead of going, why does this keep happening to me? Go, okay, what am I missing? Like, can I have a translator, please? I really don't want to do this again. So let me learn what I need to learn.
Isn't life, Tanya, just so generous? How we'll keep coming back and offer us opportunity to see it from another lens, another angle. It's like this. I think everything, and it sounds like you and I in this way are quite similar. We look at everything and we say, this what's happening is designed to point me in the direction for this next It's prepping me, priming me for readying myself for taking proper action on the next step. Not always the right step, but just a step. Because think about the pressure, think about the behaving, performing life that happens. You're like, well, I must take the right step. And it's like, you know what, actually, we all realize that we as humans do but one thing, and that's the same. We all stumble through life. Who has a playbook for exactly how this is going to go? We can't predict this. There's no way.
Yeah.
And so what I love what you do is you literally take, it's like your dad modeled this for you. He says, listen, there's nothing wrong with being sad, because sad is an important, if we don't allow, like, I love what you're doing, keeping sadness, keeping every emotion safe, provided we let the emotion be the thing that lets us enjoy it and then point us to the next thing. It's like, let your sadness, let it not stuck you. Let your joy not stuck you. Let it all point to the next thing. And I think let it all point you to appreciate the step you're currently on and what you desire to go to next. So it's like, if you feel sad that dad is gone, of course we feel sad. And he goes, listen, that's beautiful. And thank you for that. But let yourself not be stuck there. Let it point you to the appreciation of actually my life. And you're going, well, that would also expand our joy. And so if we would perhaps mature the sadness that we have and not rush through it, let's feel the sadness and the joy that we feel. And I love that. Bring it together. Some people are, I believe, in active denial of the loss they feel. And that's just changing the fact from feeling like your dad isn't here physically, but his memories, you can still build a relationship with him. It's just different, not with a physical body. So I think it's totally okay to mourn. If you don't, you're missing a very important step. And now you're just like positive thinking hyperbole, right? But if you listen to his message, he's like, listen, in life, and I don't know what the message is for you, but I'm hearing, it's like, if we're not careful, we get stuck. I got stuck for 2.5 years, sleeping 18.5 hours a day, wanting to not be here, sedating myself with melatonin and gravel is what I ended up doing, but I didn't want to be gone, but I learned the lesson, the memo, like you said. It took me 2.5 years to get the different memo. And the good news is this: life will keep coming at you until you until you go, oh, I perceive this. I'm stuck here. All of this was sent for me as an arrow pointing me to the next thing. What is it? And I think it's appreciation. What do you think?
Yeah, like I think for me, the biggest thing was, so he was my stepfather. And when he first came into the family, and it's funny because this all comes up because Father's Day was just near and I'd lost both of my all my fathers are gone now. And I remember saying to him, like, I feel guilty because so many years I fought him hard on him coming into our family. I really, and he said, I just have one question. I'm just curious why. And I said, honestly, because I knew you were going to take my mom. Because when he came in, I knew he had this vision of wanting to sail around the world. And that's what they did. They sold everything. They had a boat and then they went sailing. And it was a wonderful experience for them. And my mom needed to be her own person. And he said, but guilt is a useless emotion that we bestow upon ourselves. Nobody else can make you feel guilty. Only you can make yourself feel guilty. So why are you torturing yourself like that? And instead of looking at what you feel that you don't have, whether it's your relationship with me, why don't you look at what you were able to have? So stop looking at, so narrow-minded of going, I wish I could have had a better, we have a great relationship. Like, you're talking to me right now. You came when I needed you. So you're focusing on the wrong aspect of it. And that really made me stop whenever I get stuck in those, in those moments of life where I'm like, God, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? Am I supposed to be doing this? Where am I supposed to be? I sort of stop and I just remember sitting in the room and having that chat with him and go, okay, I need to change what I'm focusing on right now. Let's focus on something different. And it's not always easy to do. Sometimes I get stuck in that little hole. And then that's when, for myself, I turn to humor to go, okay, I got to laugh my way out of this, because, it's, for me, that's what makes me remember not to take myself so seriously.
Gosh, isn't it interesting? And I love what you're bringing up. Isn't it fascinating how we all know that the deepest state of connection is presence? And to shame ourselves to the finish line never works. We're going to be exhausted and we're going to burn out. It's not going to be a pretty picture. Whatever will happen won't be pretty. There is a useful side to guilt. Guilt is different than shame. Guilt, if it makes you more present, meaning guilt for, let's say you commit an act that isn't beneficial to the human race. You knock off another human. You kill a human. Guilt makes you not want to do that action again. That's the simplicity of guilt. But I hear what your dad's saying, or your stepdad. Your stepdad is saying, if you go beyond and if you attach the shame mechanism to it, it takes you out of presence. So the first style, the one that I mentioned, if you feel bad about doing something that wasn't helpful, guilt is an emotion that we feel that brings us more present and brings us deeper presence to the reality, meaning we get away from fantasy. And instead of being like, yeah, we connected with the world because we were on national television, haha, see, we're in prison now, but at least we got attention. Guilt brings us to the reality of, actually, you know what, that was not a good thing. Like, this is just not good, and I don't want to do that again. So it helps to up level our action. But I 100% agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
In the relation to, if we move guilt even towards shame a little bit, where it becomes identity. And I think overall what I'm saying is, we all know that presence is the gift to one another. If there isn't presence, there can be no empathy. If there's no empathy, there's no communication, because before a child said a word, the child knew how to communicate, and the parent to the child through empathy. It's the unspoken language. It's the thing that pierces everything. Beyond words, beyond body language, empathy will do it.
Yeah. And I think, being okay with feeling all of the emotions and that they're all important, because we can't just be happy all the time, or you forget why it's precious, for all those good moments. And I think that's why, for me in my own life, I mean, when I'm in the moment, I'm in the moment. Like, I'm in the anger, I'm in the frustration, I'm in the, whatever bad feeling you want to put to it. Hey, I sit with it every now and then. But it's those moments where you sort of take a step back and you go, that it was okay for that to happen, because now going forward, I'm going to appreciate those moments. Even if we go back to the story of my dad, now I take more time to stop. And like you said, live in the presence when I'm around my family members, because I go, you know what, this is precious. So I'm not going to be on my phone. I'm going to sit and I'm going to be present, because I want those memories and I want those emotions to sort of soak in, so that, like you said, I don't have that emotion of guilt of going, gosh, I wish I would have been more present. I want to learn that lesson. Don't want to do that lesson again.
It's interesting when we stop and appreciate, just contemplate, listeners, when you stop and appreciate that you as a human don't have to decide what's right or wrong. When you do that, feel the peace that comes into your soul, not having to decide and be the judge. Is this good or bad? There's a story in the Bible. I'm an amateur there. But I'll tell you something. There's a story. Whether it's true or not, I could care less. I think it's a beautiful story. The story goes a bit like this. There's this tree in the middle of the garden, Adam and Eve walking around. God says, don't touch the tree. Adam and Eve say, hey, listen, everything is good. We have everything we want, but there's this one tree. Why can't we decide if it's good or bad? You say don't touch it. Why can't we be like you? And I think we as humans, we get it wrong. We think God's the one that's this force is out there deciding for us, and we can't, and then we want to be like it or him or her or whatever. And so here's the ending of the story. They took a bite. Who cares who did it first? I could care less. And that's not even the point. The point is this. The force of nature said to them, this is how this story goes. You wanted to decide what's good or bad. Therefore, you will have to toil. And so think about what we get to connect with, that we don't have to decide whether it's right or wrong. All suffering comes when we decide, when we appoint ourselves as the judge, apparently. And here's why most people do it. The religious community does this typically because they believe that that's what God does. The only thing is, if the story is true that Jesus came down and he was the Son of God, think about this, religious folk. Jesus was like human, came in flesh for that moment. So we as a body of people, you and I, everyone, we have a divided self. You have demands of your life and you have desires of your life. So you don't have it all figured out. It's the tension, it's the pressure right there. Demand on one side, desire, and somewhere between. So if you have a highway that's overdeveloped on demands, which society typically has, demands and commands, this is what I must be. I should be an accountant like this. I should not be funny. I should be like this. But your desire is to bring some lightness to the world. What's interesting is if you have an overdeveloped highway here of demands and a little mule path here on desires, you will live a very suffering-filled life. And so here's the thing. Just like us, I think God, universe, whatever, has a divide. It's divided. So we get to decide. We don't have to think that we want to be like God and decide like he does, if it's or her does, if it's right or wrong. We throw ourselves into a complete hellish experience, and it's learned helplessness and suffering. If we be about not appreciating that our highest state as a human is not to return to animal state, which is deciding what's right or wrong, good or bad, safe or unsafe. We get to live in the moment and be present and connect with what is here and allow that connection to offer us the invitation to participate with it in a way where what we feel, like you say, all feelings are safe. Let that feeling point us and bring us, let it be an arrow that points us to the next thing to help evolve. Why are we trying to solve life? If we're trying to solve life, that means life's the problem. If life's the problem, then who wants to be here? All I happen to know is some force put us here for a reason. And it isn't so that we can just hope and pray and wait that we can get the fuck out of here. Pardon the language. That's not the idea. I don't think anyway. The idea is to appreciate to be here and be like, this is a gift. The only thing is it's challenging because sometimes we have, back to the point, we have gifts that come and they surprise us and it's different than we thought.
Yeah. Yeah. Or it's not, I find too, what sometimes people get stuck on is it's, they have for so long this dream of what they thought their life was going to be. Because I did that too. I was going to go to school. I was going to do accounting. I was going to open up my own firm. I was going to have employees. This is what my life was going to be. And then I got there and I went, well, this is shit. Like, I don't like this at all. Like, this is exactly what I wanted and is exactly what I don't want. Like, right. So, and I mean, it took me a long time to go, okay, so I need to, because of course, like you were saying, it was that demands of people that are like, but you got to where you wanted to be. You can't just walk away from that. Meanwhile, my desire was like, why not? Like, why can't I just change? Why do I have to? Because of course my father was in the military. My mother worked for the government. You picked a job and that is what you did. And I was like, no, I don't ever want to know. And my mom always jokes because she says, when you were young, your brother wanted to be lawyer, doctor, cowboy, pirate. He changed. You wanted to be a cashier. Like pushing buttons was like, that would have been heaven for you. And, but she's like, as I see you get older, I realized that I had to understand. And she says, my stepdad helped her on this of going, she hasn't lost her way. She's just not willing to grow up. And that doesn't mean that she's not mature or she's being childish. She just doesn't want to have to decide what she wants to be. She wants to be able to decide multiple things. And for me, entrepreneurship gave me that opportunity of going, I want to do this. Now I want to do this. Like, so it's fascinating.
Beautiful.
It's fascinating for me when, you know, people will go like, tell me all of this stuff. And I like go through the businesses and I can see their head trying to connect them. And I'm like, don't connect. There's no connection. I just woke up one day and went, let's, you know, let's be a cashier today. And then let's be a doctor. Like, let's just try a bunch of different things. But I understand that that's very confusing for a lot of people because they feel like I started something, I have to finish it. And for me, I sort of go, but do I have to finish it right now? Like, I'm okay to leave it. And maybe I come back to that. Maybe I come back to, you know, owning a retail store again. Maybe I come back to being a franchisee again. Maybe I never do, but I'm going to try something else. And when I started a business once, I remember sitting in a room with my dad and saying, I don't know, there's just so much going on. He was sort of in palliative care at that time. I said, there's just a lot of stuff going on and I don't know if I can do it. And like, I'm just really scared. And he brought up that childhood dream of wanting to be a cashier. And he said, look, remember when that was like, that would have been heaven for you. So if you fail, then maybe you have to get a job being a cashier at Walmart. But either way, you got to live two dreams because you got to do this. And then you get to live a dream that you had when you were young. So you can look at it as I would fail and then have to be a cashier, or I've stopped that dream and now I get to do another one. And I thought, oh, okay, well, that sounds better than, and it's that perception, right? Of how we choose to look at life.
Yeah. And you know what? I think that's a fascinating, I love that because some people have a deeper comfort and holding pattern. They can hold it longer for being in the known. So if you know how it's going to be, I got certainty that I'm going to get a job, a paycheck forever. They take securement on that. And if you throw me into that position, or perhaps you might be bored. And so what I'm hearing you say, this is a fascinating play. The human being, regardless of how good you feel with a reoccurring, doesn't change platform, at some point in time, we all have need for variety. And so it's like your story to me brings up how naturally we become uncomfortable with the known, because we all have a desire to focus on the unknown and to kind of give ourselves the liberty not to cement our feet in any one place. Like, why is the good news not that we get to experience a bunch of life? Why just one specific? So it's a little story, and I just call it floating down the river. Imagine one day you walk down the river and there's a bunch of inner tubes. It's a Saturday afternoon, and you're going to go for a little float. It's the lazy river, but it's done in life. It's like, okay, but it's real. Like, it's a river. It's a long one. It's you may be on for a couple hours, but it's beautiful, a little stream. And you see there's a bunch of cars, but where are all the people? So the cars are parked on the shore. Where are the people? You have no idea. You hop on a little inner tube and you start floating. All of a sudden you meet some people. You're like, this is kind of interesting. So you kind of hear them from a distance, and you know, you can kind of paddle there if you want with your hands. That's all you got. But you're like, you know, it's kind of interesting. I just like being at this spot, and I don't need to go and hang on to their tubes. And you just keep, and you're like, I'm floating down the river with these people. Kind of nice. I don't think I'll link to that. I'll just keep going. Now, that was nice to pull that in. Put the book down at chapter 3, maybe, because you're like, yeah, I'm good. You know, then you keep going, and all of a sudden you come across, oh, this is really fascinating for you. You're like, wow. And so you go up to these inner tubes, and what you realize is people, they're kind of together, but as you come close, one person lets go of hanging onto the tubes, and he goes there, and you're going, and you're following along with them. And sure enough, you're really fascinated. But what you really like is that nature is always calling you to just appreciate many more things than what you're just singularly focusing on, which is this conversation. And all of a sudden, you have a nudge, right? We all feel this. We're like, can I just let go of these inner tubes and just keep floating? And we're like, I think I just did. And we let go. We're like, this is neat. And actually what we realize is the group is like, okay, see you later. And they're okay with it. We're like, whoa. oh, that's neat. I had to decide that. And also we keep floating by, and this guy, he says, now there's a party scene coming up. And we're like, holy smokes, these people got a boombox in the center. There's like 15 tubes together. We're all floating down the river. We get to decide, and you get to decide, and if we want to, and perhaps we're like, yeah, we're interested into, for a cocktail. And this is, by the way, the one that when we approach, you realize there's people coming and going all the time. And that's what this little party hub is all about. And so here's the thing. We get to decide what we're floating and who we're floating down the river with. But when it comes to who we're floating down the river with, we have to be honest that we're floating down with ourselves and who we are on the inside. There's a story about Pip, and there's Pip. Pip is a person on this earth. He's an interesting human. He's committed a whole bunch of crimes. He's been involved in the drug industry, and now he's in a firefight. Guns blasting everywhere. And he's always told himself that before he dies, if he ever, once something goes really awry, he will just ask for repentance or something. Like, I haven't helped the earth, so I want to ask for some betterment. He's on the other side. It's black now. He's like, oh shit, I think oh damn, like down my soul. And he sees a man standing beside him dressed in white, or human man. Doesn't matter. It's a human. And he's like, whoa, I always told myself I was going to apologize, but it's too late. But maybe I still apologize, and maybe I won't go to the place that I think I might go to. This heaven hell thing. He's like, And so the angel looks at him and says, hey, welcome aboard. Let's go for a little walk. And Pip's like, oh shoot, I'm really good at manipulating. I think I'm going to try my wares on manipulate, because that's how I got on with life down there. Here I'm in a different place. What is this now? But then he goes, but because I'm good at manipulating, perhaps I'll say nothing. And he goes, let me just try it. Maybe they think I'm a different person. Sure enough, the angel takes him straight through these gates and beautiful city. And the angel goes, this is all for you, Pip. And Pip's like, holy shit, what luck I didn't say a blasted thing, because I made it by mistake, but I eked my way in. This is great. Angel gives him a card and says, this is all for you. I'll tell you one thing. What you're going to realize here is everyone's doing but one thing. Everyone's winning. And this is all for you. Congratulations. Here's a card. On the card, here's my address and here's my contact number. If you ever need me, call me. Pip's like, no problem. Never thinks he's going to call the angel, because this is like too good to be true. So he goes into the first building. It's a casino. He loves it. VLT wins. Blackjack. Everything he touches turns to gold. There's not a chance he's going to lose. And for a second, for a week and two, he gets off on it. Week 3, he's like, Monday morning rolls around. He's not interested in going down and playing any more of these games, because there's no risk. There's nothing that could happen. His friends call him from downstairs and say, hey, listen, there's a new way of winning. There's a new level of winning. You got to come down. You got to join the fun. So Pip goes down. Sure enough, a new level. He wins the first round. Incredible. It's a version of blackjack, but something a little different. He wins. He can't believe it. He tries it again. And oh my goodness, he realizes, shit, here comes again. I'm going to win. So he wins. He's had enough. He tips the table, goes outside, pulls out the card from his pocket, calls the angel and said, there's got to be a mistake here. I'm not the person who you think I am. I'm in the wrong place. Angel says, oh, where do you think you are? Pip goes, I'm in heaven. Angel says, no, you're in hell. So there's to the story. What we want an opportunity for us to play with, us not knowing how it will end or how it will go. If we know how it's going to go, we get bored with it. And we want to be kind of in the middle someplace. We want to just enjoy it and have the tension. If there isn't a chance that we can lose, and here's the thing, the losses of our life don't invite us to enter into a suffering stage. They invite us just to please accept inner nudgings. Like you say, like sometimes we check out for a moment. For me, it was 2.5 years, and I hear your story, and I can't help but go take it back to, this humor thing. This humor thing, I think, in life is, we get to all be about 3 stages in life. The first stage is the life phase. So we're constructing. Which child doesn't construct through answer? My son, the Google is the answer for, I study I import eggs from California because I know they don't have soy and they do eat. I'm from Canada, so I import across the border. My son goes on the Google and says, Dad, here's the answer why you don't need to do this. And I think this is so cute. I read this stuff and I've studied this stuff for weeks. And he goes online and in 2 seconds has the answer. I'm like, see, the first stage of life, the children of life, they get their answers, and how they build is through answer. This is how you get your first car, your first job, your first business. You get certainty, you get strength through answer. So that's stage one. Stage two of life is the deconstruction stage. And we do this in every area of life. We deconstruct, we realize, oh, I'm building just on answer, but then something happens in life and we get kind of like, oh, this isn't working anymore. Like, I'm kind of getting bored here, just always knowing the answer and going, there's something about also I can find strength in the not knowing, because half of what I'm doing through in life is I'm realizing it's not turning out the way that I thought it was. Right. And sadly, most people at that stage, they go back to the construction stage of life and they don't learn anything. And what ends up happening is they go, oh, that deconstruction stage, so it's the death cycle. They go, that's scary shit. Like, I don't want to be there. The only thing is, that's what we all go through, meaning when we breathe in and then we take in, but when we breathe out, we let go. Every breath is like that, the seasons. And so instead of feeling threatened that the death stage is like killing all our dreams, it's actually inviting us to onboard something which is the next stage, which is reconstruction. So you go from construction, deconstruction, reconstruction. And in reconstruction, you take everything. You take your construction stage, your deconstruction stage, and you make room for all of it. And it's all your story. And you can just live authentically with owning who you are. Like, I don't edit any of my podcasts. I don't edit my stuff out. I just don't. Because I want to experience me. I don't want to show myself that I operate and enjoy myself best when I create this illusion that I got it all figured out, because I don't. I get my strength from the knowing and the unknown. And so, right. And so I don't know what your thought is on it.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, I used to, when I, just to the podcast point, I used to, when I first started, do heavy editing. And then I thought, no, because I like the little nuggets and the pauses and the sense of a conversation. And I used to have like, these are the questions I'm going to ask. And I realized from doing it that way, I was missing, and I had said it to you just before we started, like, let's just dump down some rabbit holes, because that's why I don't like, scripted stuff, because I'm like, I'm one of those people that I feel like I would do really good at improv, the yes and all of that other stuff, because there's nothing scripted. I could go wherever I want to go. And that's fascinating to me, to let my mind go anywhere. It goes to some weird ass places. Let me tell you.
Isn't that cool though? Isn't that like,
but it's fun. And it's fun when you have like, I'm very fortunate that I have a husband who loves to try to figure out how I got to that. Cause he was like, sorry, I was just telling you about my day at work and how we were filling the freezer. And then you said, oh, we need mayo. How did you connect those two things together? And I was like, well, you were talking about filling the freezer, and I thought maybe you were filling vanilla ice cream. And then that made me think of white and creamy. And then I was thinking of the sandwich I had at lunch today, which made me think, oh, I was almost done for mayo. And then we need mayo. He's like,
right.
Okay. And I was like, doesn't that make perfect sense?
I know. And you know what's so fascinating there? It's like when you attach yourself to the desires of who you are. Like, who wants to walk around with a big bag of weight all day long? Like, we like to be light and airy and instead of being so full of willpower, like, I got to take a list with nothing wrong with list if it works for you, but I got to write down mayo. Why not let your intuition naturally guide you there?
Yeah.
I think when you get tender with life experience, you let your mind connect with the obsession of who you are. And the obsession is we're all created unique and colorful and creative. And when you do that, you actually stay tethered to your need for unconditional love. Because if you don't love yourself and how you get there, if you let yourself, and I love what your dad, likely he helped you not shame yourself and how you deal with stuff. Your husband is a lucky man, and he makes a wise decision by being curious how you got there. It's like, we went to improv this last weekend for Father's Day, and to see, and there was 4 people doing improv. There's 3 of them that were really enjoying their experience, and meaning that you could see that they were enjoying observing what was coming out of them, like, just, whoa, what happened there? And they're enjoying it. The other person was overtly harsh to themselves. And honestly, the person that was harsh to themselves, it kind of disconnected for that moment. And we felt bad. I think we all enjoy observing people who enjoy, how the freak did I get where I just got? And it's like, whoa, that's amazing. And I think the beauty of what you're saying there is, yes, we can will ourselves towards the finish line, and maybe even sometimes across the finish line. but that might happen one or two races of life. We're going to get so tired of willing ourselves there, our willpower will exhaust. Meaning the human being and consciousness will do it naturally if we let it. Meaning if we participate and enjoy, like to your point, enjoy who you are. How did I get here? And it's like the cream and this and that. Whoa, here we go.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, age definitely does that, and just experience, because when I was younger, I for sure wouldn't have said anything, because I was, growing up, I heard a lot like, she's a little bit much, she talks too much. And I took that really to heart for a lot of years. And then I realized, I just don't care anymore. Like, I am okay if somebody finds me too much, not a problem. You're free to go, but I'm not going to stop being your version of too much, because I found, one, it was really exhausting. It's because a lot of people go like, you're just a lot. And I'm like, but that's easy for me not being who I truly am. And just letting, letting my freak flag fly and just not overthinking stuff has brought me to a lot of really interesting conversations. And, even in the podcast world of asking, questions that I'm like, wow, this isn't kind of a scripted question. This has nothing to do with sort of what they had of, because people will send you, here's some like questions to ask me, and I read through them. But it's these little rabbit holes that I'm like, those are the questions that I want that curiosity, to ask different things, that curiosity of children that will ask a question purely because it's on their mind and they want to know. And I hope that when people are listening to this, this episode, that's one thing that they take from it, that they remember it is okay to be authentically who you are wherever you are. And those that find you too much can find somewhere else.
Yeah, I love it. They can find you somewhere else. Gosh, when I think about what you said there, it just lights me up to, I just can't help. And I know you and I are similar here. We can't help but feel empathy towards those people who, when a certain presence shows up, they have a hard time appreciating that. I'll never forget years ago, Elon Musk said something, it may have been a year ago, but he said to the point on, if we were present to every single thing that would happen in our world, our brains would explode. He goes, being present to everything is very, very, very difficult. And all that I happen to know is we live in a society that apparently says we are beneficial human when we move from thing to thing quickly, and we just kind of pedal away from our fears and just hope we're going to land up in some place where it's joyous. Apparently, like, society says this is the formula. The only thing is, then somebody like you comes along where the presence is much, meaning what's happening here right now, you never sent me scripted questions, but you and I are present here with each other, and presence creates something magical. Meaning we're discovering something in real time beyond what you and I are thinking of, because when two people come together, there a new thing forms when you're deeply present. And so when you and I, when we are present with people, meaning we show our presence and we're just right there. For some people, it's like, whoa, what are you trying to do here? I'm trying to anxiously strive towards my target, and you're pulling me to the moment. What are you doing? You're taking me away. And it's actually a gift what you're doing. It's just they're going, it's a whole bunch much. And it's to, Elon Musk's point. You're right. For some people, and I think there's an entrainment. Presence is something that in the beginning, it's hard to do because it slows us down. But the cool thing is it lets us see so much.
Yeah.
And it lets us see the reality. And then we can ground ourselves, and it's just so peaceful there. And I think a lot of people have bought this lie that, to be striving and to not be content. And contentment has nothing to do with not achieving. It's just we have to mature the achiever. Sorry, you were going to say.
I think too, like, My favorite thing is to be around toddlers, especially a toddler. Oh, I have one right now who's across the street who asks why over and over and over again. And his mom's like, it just drives me crazy. And I'm like, I love your kid. So whenever you get sick of him asking why, send him over. Because for me,
Wow.
that is so, and she was like, I don't understand. Like, doesn't it drive you crazy? And I said, no, because I'm trying to beat him so he stops asking why. But for me, I go, I love how inquisitive he is. But for me, it's such a great exercise. Like the other day, he said, why are some clouds puffy and then some clouds just look like the color of the sky? And I'm like, because the Care Bears fluff them up again. And he's like, why? And I'm like, because like, and it just went on and on. And I was like
Stop.
trying, but it was like, for me, I was like trying to come up with different answers. It's the same question, but different answers. And at the end of it, I realized when I had like sat down at night and I thought, that kid is brilliant, because him doing that caused my brain to get out of constantly thinking about, if I do this, then this will happen. If I do this, this will happen. And I was connecting so much things. I had a fantastic rest of the afternoon. Everything went smoothly. I wasn't problems that I'd been trying to work on all of a sudden cleared themselves right up because of remembering that little kid going, but why? But why? But why? And I just kept going, but why won't this work? Okay, let's do this. But I think we forget that, right? And to me,
So good.
that's such a, I think that if you ever get an opportunity to be around a kid, just sit and watch how their mind works, because I think that's where we all need to get to, because there's any kid who can take a stick and in 2 seconds have it be a cane, then a gun, then it turns into something like, it's just this one simplistic object that used to be on a tree turns into so many different things so quickly without question.
That's
just like,
and that's the joy of living. The simplistic thing, people call me the self-help hacker. The simplistic of self-help is wanting it as it is. Meaning, I got a stick. You don't go like, I wish I had a real gun, or I wish I had like a Nerf gun that would look like a gun. You're going, this is what I got. I'm chewing on my banana, I'm chewing on my bologna sandwich, for the child says. My parents don't want to get me a gun, but watch me. I'm going to turn this thing into a gun. So he does. He eats it, and curiously, so I, like you, apparently I ask questions like this all the time. Some people got sick of it, to the point of getting sick of yesterday. And I'm having quite the experience where we live in a really safe neighborhood, and it's quite the affluent neighborhood. They say in Canada, by household, it's the highest house or highest income household. So it's just what it is here. So it's really safe. And so everybody here is like, kind of, well, let's be honest, they kind of live a little posh. And so here I am, and I'm just like wanting to enjoy all of life. So sometimes it gets a little boring for me because everybody just has their thing, right? However, the children make it very interesting, because last night I was going to sleep, and I love to go to bed at roughly 8:39 because I like to get up really early in the morning. So when I go to sleep, of course, now in the summertime here in Canada, the sun stays up to 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I'm in Alberta. So yeah.
Right.
It was 10:30 last night. I think it was still light out.
So what I'm deeply curious about is what's happening out there, because I'm hearing the voices, and I fall asleep hearing the children play. And so they're playing hide and seek, whatever they're doing. And all of a sudden I hear, like, apparently everyone here has kind of put together, except for the kids have interesting language. And so you also hear these children be like, come out, you sore loser. And I hear these, and I hear them like debating things, and just like dropping their scooter here, and then all of a sudden they sit on it, and cars drive around, and they just leave it. I'm going, what are you doing? Like, this is so interesting. And so I hear these words. Now, to the point, this is how I felt like when I was a child sometimes around certain people. Last night, I heard a child, and I was just getting ready for bed. So I'm walking past the window, and I can hear they're just having this heated discussion, apparently, these girls. And also one of the girls says to the other child, and this is like so untoward, like for me, like, whoa. But this child looks at the other child and says, hey, listen, can't you just shut the fuck up and stop asking why? And I'm like, ooh, that's so sad for me. But what's interesting is it shows you the dimension. You think you know what's going on in someone's heart or in their home. Like, where did that child learn to say that towards another human being? And I kind of felt all those tears in my life. Like I was the one who felt like I just can't stop asking why. I can't stop asking why. And I have a little acronym that I created. It's just RAJ, Raj. And in life, if we are non-resistant and not attached to outcome and non-judgmental, we'll live a pretty good life. Like, I hear your story, and all I can think about is getting my hands into the sandbox of life. Who doesn't want to return to being a child, being playful like that? That doesn't mean childlike, but it means to wonder with curiosity and awe, and let what wants to create directly in front of you, participate with it and mold it, and then watch it come undone, and not fight it, but work with it, harmonize with nature, and then be like, I get to be part of it. This is amazing. I don't have to be it. I get to be part of it.
Yeah. And I love, like, and I haven't gone in a while, but when I used to go to conferences, my favorite question to ask people is, why do you do what you do? And it was funny because they would say, well, I help people. And I said, I didn't ask what you did. I asked why. Why do you do it? And I try to wait until, and I'll keep asking over and over again, because, and I say, okay, but answer it in the most childish, like as a child would answer it. And this one lady, I'll never forget it. She had a franchise of little huts, like ice cream huts that would come out in the summer. And I asked her, like, why do you do what you do? And she goes, I like watching kids discover a flavor. It's joyful to me.
There you go.
And I said, is that why? And she goes, yeah. So I just kept opening them because I just kept getting new locations. Wow. And I went, what joy she has in her life, because she made her career all about just enjoying how someone else is enjoying what she's giving to them. And I thought, that's what I want out of life. I want to be able to sit there and go, yeah, I love what I do. Like, I have a lot of people that go, are you you're 45, are you thinking about retirement? And I'm like, I have no intentions of retire. I don't know why you guys are really stuck on this notion. And my mom, who, is nearing her 70s, people go like, aren't you going to retire? And she's like, no,
because I love what I do. I love what I do.
Well, and to her, she's like, sorry, I spent like over 20 years just on a boat, just sailing, kind of sort of living life. Like, I want to work now because I sort of had that time off. And so for me, I just go, that word is like a curse word. It's worse than what that kid said outside. To me, that's a dirty word, because I don't ever want to be in a position. And some people, that is their dream, and I don't fault them for it at all. I'm not trying to say that your decision, if that is what works for you, but for me, I want to just keep working because I love it. Like, and I said to my husband he wants to retire. He wants to be like, done work, and that's it. And I'm like, okay, but you need to be okay with the fact that I'm not going to retire. And he just said, that's fine, but I would love to have a motorhome and just travel the world. So if you want to work, can you find something that you can do anywhere? Nice. And I was like, done. Not a problem. So I guess, like, and the reason why I'm saying this is because I think that I love everything that you're saying, because I think as a society of a whole, we need to stop taking our lives and careers as adults so seriously, and realize that we're missing out on the best thing of life, which is being present, like, you speak of so much, and remembering to laugh at ourselves when we have those moments where we're like, that was dumb. That was sort of a stupid thing. Like this morning, and he's going to kill me for saying this, because I said, can I post that? And he was like, you will not. So my husband was trying to put some tea tree on a Band-Aid, and he's like, there's something wrong. This is not working. And he's tapping the bottle to the Band-Aid. And I went, is it empty? And he looks at the bottle and he goes, yes. I went, that's why it's not working. Right. And he was like, that was so stupid. But I was like, that was awesome. So in that moment, I said to him, I love that you didn't get upset. I love that you just laugh at stuff like that, because it was something that was really silly. He was just like, I need this to work. I'm late. Like, why isn't this working? But to take that moment out, instead of being pissed off, well, now I'm late, blah, 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 going to anger, he was just like, that was really stupid. Right? And I was like, yes, laugh at it.
A person gets it when the body reveals it in real time. It's one thing to say you know it. Knowledge, we're overfed on this. We show that we actually know it by, if we get it, by how we do it. So it's like this, right? There he is, and there he does this thing. And if he would just always get his strength from being the one that's the stoic one, that's got it all figured out. And oh, this is interesting. But he leaves room. He leaves room for being like, somebody brings me an awareness. I wasn't thinking. Somebody said, is it empty? And then what he does is he allows that to encourage himself forward. All I know, when I was raised, my parents didn't laugh a lot. They were very serious. And all that I know is I used to be very nervous about laughing. Like, honestly, when people would have laughter, I'd be like, I could do it for a little while, and then I have to check out. I'd have to just go somewhere else. But I married someone who's a laugher. When I was dating her, I'll never forget, her and I are just playfully wrestling in the basement one day of her parents' house, and she kneed me right here, right by the eye, and it was bleeding. We'd only been dating for like 6 months, and I'm like, oh my goodness, she just started laughing. I'm like, what's going on? But she was, I'm like, what's going on? And I'm going, hey, this is, and I'm looking at her going, are you serious? But I'm like, okay, I don't know. And she goes, hey, honey, she probably didn't say honey at the time. She just said, hey, Jane, let's go upstairs. My mom will fix you up. So I go upstairs, and I thought perhaps sanity would prevail. So I enter upstairs, and then I realize where she gets her laughter from. Her mom just starts cracking up and be like, oh my goodness, look at this. And so honestly, I remember thinking, what is this? Is this like the loopy house, or what is it? But all that I realized is life can be challenging already enough as is. Why not encourage yourself forward with the silly that happened? Meaning, hey, listen, we can repress the sadness that's a safe emotion by a few things, by staying stuck there, or by pedaling away and just laughing at it. No, I think when you do justice to what's actually going, my now wife and my now mother-in-law, they weren't not empathizing with me. They're empathizing, but they're encouraging me forward to see the lightness of it. Like, look what happened. So now, for example, we bought the boys, so 17 Rowan, 17 Harrison's 15. We bought them scooters, these electric scooters, and so they zip around. And so sometimes I ride with them. And one day I decided I was going to go jump curbs with them. Now they'd done that a little bit, and they jumped stairs, but I thought I was going to show them how it was to be done. I'm 46, and I'm wearing sandals, and it's a Saturday afternoon, and we're going out to like get a little Sunday. And I say, Harrison, watch this. I jumped the curb, and my tire came down in front of the curb, not after the curb, so the whole thing tipped over. I flew over. And I kid you not, like, oh my goodness, my leg was bleeding, my pants were ripped, my skin is off, I ripped the toenail off my foot. And Harrison looks at me, he goes, Dad, let's just take you home real quick. I'm like, okay. So I'm just driving home, looking down, blood all over the scooter. I get home and open the garage door, and I was welcomed to, guess what? Laughter. There's Meg. She's like, oh, you look hilarious. What happened? And you know what? Honestly, it was the first time that actually I just started laughing with them while I'm in the tub and I'm trying to wash this off with peroxide and trying to get the gravel out and stuff. I'm going, this is, and honestly, it soothed my wounds. It wasn't like I didn't reckon what happened, but it actually made me go, heck, that was quite the experience. And I wouldn't say that I wouldn't try it again. Actually, I think it was hilarious when I just tried, So.
But it took you out of that moment, that wasn't something that was like traumatic that happened to you. That was like now a funny story that you get to tell.
Well, wouldn't you know, this is interesting. I have a question for you. Wouldn't you say it actually brought me deeper into the moment? Instead of me going, exactly, instead of me being like, I don't want to be here. I can't believe this happened. Now I'm going to have to soothe my toenail and try to nurture this thing back to life. Instead of thinking like, oh, what's all the suffering going to be down the road? My workout's going to hurt because my pants are going to rub over my scar. If anything, I got to look at my wound and be like, it's bleeding. Look. You know what I mean?
Look at I got this in the block. Like, yeah, it's that war room. And it's, and I love that because my son does that to me all the time. I will try to do stuff, the same thing. And I'll be like, hey, oh, and watch this. And then same thing, right? Like I fall or I collapse. I think I was doing a cartwheel once. I was like, I used to be able to do cartwheels. And so I was like, hey, watch this. It did not. Nope. In my head, it was stunning. In real life, it was not. And he like straight face just goes, is that really what you wanted me to see? Or is there more? and it just cracks me right up because I'm like, in my head, that was like, you should have seen it in my head. It was like Olympic worthy. And he was like, not in reality.
And the funny thing is, probably even if you'd watch this on replay, if you had a video of it, and like I've tried cartwheel and my legs are not straight up, they're like horizontal. Yeah. I still feel like it looks incredible. So I don't know about you. The feeling was all that you came for, and you delivered. It was amazing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
You owned it.
But I think, with all of these stories, I think that people need to remember to have those moments where you just get to be silly. Like I remember when COVID was happening and we were right in the thick of it. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, and it was right. We couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't do anything. And I thought I need to have some humor. And so did this stupid video. I'll put it in the notes. People can see it. This really dumb video of me at night with a hoodie on, sneaking out with, well, if you're in Canada, you'll understand this, a big wad of Canadian Tire money, and I like, you'll be able to see what my cartwheel looked like. So I like roll down the hill of my house and I hide behind a tree. And then I do this cartwheel to another tree. And let me tell you, I am not a small girl, so that I did not hide behind the tree at all. You can clearly see who I am. And then I yell and I'm like, serpentine, serpentine. And I run off. Well, I didn't so I got my husband and my son in the house to video me doing this. Yeah. Well, afterwards, that I had it in my head. I kind of had this thing scripted that I was going to do. They are sitting on the couch and my son looks at my husband and he goes, where's mom going? And my son goes, to get waxed. And he goes, thank God. Like, it was the stupidest video. And I threw it out there because I was like, this is how dumb we are sometimes. And it's joyful for me because I just want one other person to take a laugh and go, yeah, I feel you. That was a time. Yeah. So let's not take ourselves so seriously all the time. When we have those flunders, when you have those moments where you're like, that did not, when your cartwheel doesn't work out, it's not about the perfection of the cartwheel. It's about being present in the moment and going, I gave that a try. And in my head, it was spectacular.
Well, and I hope when you say that, I hope when I think about today with COVID, and of course we've largely come out of it. And in Canada, they're talking about like waves coming forever, and that might be, which I think will be, because you're going to have to learn how to live with it. Maybe what we just want to remember is that it's going to be a little bumpy coming out of this. And you know what? Let it be what it's going to be. It's like you say, like we get to participate with making it what we like it to be. And so meaning is the first stage of life. We must give it proper meaning. And you know what, honestly, we've been given a heart and a brain that connect. And if we let our curiosities just lead us to action and people go, wow, and I challenge everyone every listener, if you feel like doing something and you think it's kind of loopy and silly, remember that it is, because nobody was given that thought the way you were. So of course, everyone's going to think it's loopy and silly. Then I challenge you, when you go and do it, don't perform it, live it, feel it, just like you do, right? Just like you mentioned that you, Miss Tanya Fox, the foxy lady, just feel it all. Then let that feeling serve you so deeply, so that when they look at it and they deadpan, and they might even be rude, they might even say, could you the F shut up? People might say, who cares? Remember something, that you did this to enjoy the moment. People are entitled to do what they want. We need to spread cheer in life. We need to be real. And we need to really like own the fact that if we feel something, that's what we all want. And if we just expect society as a collective to naturally feel, jubilant and jubilee, things are just amazing, this is what we individually do. And so I love how you're setting the tone. And I love it how your son just be like, really? Like, he says what he says, he doesn't understand, and you're going like, and that doesn't threaten me away from my creativity. My hands are in the sandbox of life, and they will be there for all my life, whether I'm holding a little stick and it becomes a gun, or it is going to be what it's going to be. I will be the curious one. And I think that's a beautiful state to be in. And I love it. It's that playful, tender, not letting facts become more than they are.
Yeah.
When the facts reveal something, you get to check out or check in. And I challenge each one of you to check in, to utilize. Don't eliminate these good things. Be curious. What's this for? Don't change the facts. Be with it. Let it be the gray of your life. And be like, yeah, watch. Wait for something to happen. You might be waiting forever.
Yeah, I love that. So speaking of checking in, this is how my brain works. So speaking of checking in, let's talk about where people can find you and what you're up to.
Thanks.
What have you got going on?
Yeah. So thanks for asking. And by the way, I've really appreciated this conversation. You're a playful one. It's always fun. It's always good. Thank you. So people can find me. Two websites I'm going to give you, but first let me say it this way. There's two ways that people typically connect with me. One is for one-on-one coaching, and one-on-one coaching is strategic results coaching. And this is work where we go super deep. And it's for those that are really hungry and looking for that ultimate personal transformational experience. And let me say it this way, because it's just you and me there, we get to get beneath the surface of your individual experience of life. And this is where we get to align with your strengths. And from that place, we get to sculpt, craft, and design a personal success and fulfillment formula that is unique to you. So this is not a formula for everyone. This is to you. So people call me a self-help hacker because we get to the root. We find the master switch that makes you tick, your strengths. And then we shape a life around this. And again, this is for those that are really hungry and want it all. So those people that are like, no, I got to have it all. You know who you are. Feel free to reach out to me by simply going to www.jamesheppner.com. And the spelling is JAMESHEPPNER.com. So you'll find me there, reach out. You'll see there's a coaching page and even a contact me page. Whichever you feel appropriate, reach out. We'll have a little discussion. Secondly, and this is a gift for all of you, I have a virtual weekly wins and losses global call. And this is quite the experience. Frankly, I think this is one of the better ways to bring raw truth. So bring reality to your last week and discover and reveal what it was actually really all about. It's a no charge call, happens every Friday at noon. And so by you jumping onto this simple call, it will deliver for you a profound experience, as what you'll be able to do is clear the deck of the unhelpful stings of last week's losses, so that when your new week begins, you're best able to launch out of the gate invigorated and ready to take that bold, courageous action toward let me say it this way, not toward, you'll be able to take courageous action forward without the unhelpful side of hesitation and delay. So I invite each one of you to show up and share as you wish to this virtual weekly wins and losses call, or you can simply just observe as other people share their personal win and their personal loss that stood out for them from the past week. So again, come and master the art of being prepared for anything, win, lose, or draw. Come and learn how to authentically celebrate both a win and a loss in real time, every time. And for that virtual weekly wins and losses global call, simply go to www.weeklywinsandlosses.com. So spell it just as it sounds, and the and in the middle, weekly wins and losses, that's A-N-D, so the way it sounds, and losses.com. And simply scroll down, halfway down the page is a link that says join this Friday's call. So again, however you find me, however you feel and feel drawn to engage, hey, listen, if you want to come and listen to some podcasts, I also have a podcast called Weekly Wins and Losses. You'll find it there. You'll find it on Apple Tunes, or iTunes, sorry, Apple Tunes. iTunes.
We all knew what you meant.
Yeah. And the podcast is called Weekly Wins and Losses with James Heppner. So, yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you for coming and jumping down rabbit holes and sharing story and laughter with me.
It's been a pleasure, and it's been one of my highlights for this morning. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much to James for joining me on the show. As always, you can head to our website at foxtalksbusiness.ca, Click on blogs on the left-hand side of the page. You'll see this episode and all of the ways that you can connect with him and us. We always love hearing from you. If you can take just a few moments to head and leave us a review wherever you like listening to our podcast, that helps us to reach more people. And I always love hearing the great things that you say about our guests because I always share it with them. We all need some good news in our day. So no matter what you're doing, remember to have fun, because if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?